You're listening to Microbin Radio, progressively elevating the conversation. Coming up next, personalities and profiles. Here's your host, Michael S. Robinson.
And top of the hour to you, good afternoon. I'm Michael Robinson, hosting Personalities and Profiles here on Microbin Radio. We're streaming live from our studios in South Florida. We're also on Facebook, so look for us at Microbin Radio. We're tweeting on Twitter at Microbin Radio also. Join me on Saturdays for the Michael S. Robinson Show in New York City on AM 970, The Answer. Every Saturday, look for the Michael S. Robinson Show. Microbin Radio is an internet radio station designed to drive the conversation progressively. So I hope you join us every Wednesday and Thursday as we talk about issues that matter to you. Today we're going to be talking about personalities and profiles. And our featured guest is an inspiration, somebody that has done an amazing job in terms of how her life has been evolving. On my last show in New York, on AM 970 The Answer, we were talking about the power of yes, what it means to be able to live in a yes universe. And today, she's going to share that with us. Her name is Toni Boehm, and she's the author of The Power of Yes. The acronym for YES is Your Empowerment System. Toni is an inspirational and dynamic speaker, certified organization and life coach. She's a nurse, she's a poet, and she's a PhD. Welcome to the show, Toni.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
It's great having you. First, I forgot to congratulate you on receiving the Charles Fillmore Award. I thought that was brilliant. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was quite an honor to receive that this year for visionary leadership and lifetime achievement.
Fantastic. I was really impressed with our conversation last Saturday because I thought you brought so much to the table in terms of this idea that we can live in a yes universe, right? And we're going to talk about that later. But before we begin, let's talk a little bit about you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, and migrated to Kansas City. We went to nursing school in Pennsylvania, came to Kansas City, started my quest for education, further education, higher education. During that time, as I was working on my master's degree in UMKC in nursing, I was hired by Hallmark Cards to turn their medical department into a wellness department. Now, this was in 1978. Remember, Herbert Benson had only written the first article on the possible relationship between stress and high blood pressure. And Hallmark jumped right on that and said they really wanted to create a wellness program. So I was hired in. I had just finished also a nurse practitioner program, one of the first that was in the United States. I saw it as the wave of the future and knew I wanted to be on that on that star. And so I went to Hallmark. I supported them for 7 years in moving from a medical model into a wellness model, providing the employees with information about their bodies and things like that. I left there and went to the American Nurses Association that was headquartered in Kansas City at that time, prior to them moving to Washington, D.C., and I was senior staff specialist for accreditation and credentialing, and we wrote, I was staff to the people that came in, the nurses that came in, to start writing the first credentialing programs for certification for nurses in specific different areas of nursing. I stayed there for about 2 years when they decided to go to Washington, and then the morning that I said, I'm not going to Washington with you, that afternoon I got another call from an organization inviting me to apply for the dean of their metaphysical school, what was actually called Unity School for Religious Studies. But it was one of the largest metaphysical schools at the time. I applied for the position and got it, and it changed the course of my life.
Wow.
What
happened? Tell us about that briefly.
Well, I took the job as the dean of the ministerial school, and it brought me then into a whole new context, that of moving from the physical realm into the realm of looking beyond the physical to what's really working in our lives beyond what we're seeing, beyond that judging of appearance.
Well, you wrote the book, The Power of Yes. I know you wrote several books, but that was basically the topic of conversation on our show last Saturday. And one of the things that I wanted to bring to the conversation at the time was the fact that we have to be open, right, to the idea that anything is possible if we put our minds to it, if we think positively, if we embrace the possibility, even though we're uncertain. Tell us why you wrote that book.
Well, it's interesting. I had been the dean for 20 years, and I had just taken a trip to Peru to work with a shaman. And truly, we went to the jungles. We went to the jungles every night. It was an hour and a half ride into the jungles. It was quite no electricity. It was very primitive. But the learnings, the shamanic journeys we went on were so powerful. And I had this incredible shamanic journey where the shaman took me to a crossroads. And he said, this is your life as it currently is. Or he didn't say it. This was all like telepathic in happening in me.
Okay. So it's not physical. It's actually happening in a journey in your mind as you're traveling.
Yes, it's a journey in my mind. But he is there to support the journey.
Right.
And I came to a crossroads. And at the crossroads, I was met by an angel or a higher being. It doesn't matter what you call it, a higher dimensional being. And I was given a choice. This is the road you know. You can continue this road. It'll be very, very successful. But this is a path of sacred service. The other path, the path less traveled, was a path of sacred service. And I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew I had to take it. And I said yes to the path of sacred service. And as I took the step onto the path, I met a woman in agonizing pain. And my whole being said, oh my goodness, this woman is going to die. And I held out my arms to her, and I held her. I just held her, and energy exuded from me. And suddenly she was filled with energy, and she made a choice. It wasn't time. It was not time to die.
Do you know who the woman was? Do you recognize the individual?
I did not at the moment, but the next day at breakfast. Now remember, we're in the jungles of Peru above the Amazon River in a Swiss Family Robinson type hotel up in the treetops. And I'm sitting at breakfast, and a woman comes up to me, and she looks really sick, haggard. And a friend was with me, and the woman said to me, "Did you hear what happened to me last night?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, on my journey, I became deathly ill, and I knew I came to the choice of, am I going to stay in this life or am I going to leave?" And she said, and an angel came to me and held me in her arms.
Wow. And
the angel just exuded energy into me.
So do you think that was the woman you saw that night?
Yes, I know it was.
Wow.
I know it was, but I didn't say a word to her.
Right,
I didn't say anything. It wasn't about that.
Right.
It was a confirmation for me that sacred service was the road less traveled.
Right.
So I came back to Unity, 20 years. I'm now vice president. I have everything I want. I'm known throughout the nation in the field that I'm in. And I get the message from Spirit in meditation, it's over. It's over. And I'm there like, what? And I know what. It's over. It was time for me to leave. And I said, okay, Spirit, I'll leave next spring. And this was April. So a couple weeks later, I'm at a retreat and we're dancing, and I go to turn. And remember, the slightest turn in consciousness, the slightest shift in consciousness. And that's why this is a yes universe, because we just have to have that little bit of, yes, I can do this. And we can make the greatest turn. So I'm making a turn and I'm dancing, and I slip, and my weight propels me. I hit my head, I come to, and I've lost my short-term memory.
Wow. Wow.
And I have to take a leave of absence. And I said, and I went home and I had to go to the neurologist in the hospital and everything, make that story short. And I have to take a leave of absence, and I cry, and for about a week I'm like crying and gnashing of teeth of,
Woe me, right? Why me?
Why me? Why me? Even after 30 years on a spiritual path at that time. And then about a week into all of that, I sit on the couch and meditating, and I hear those words, yes, yes. Yes is your empowerment system. Toni, what you say yes to right here in this moment will determine the rest of your life. What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
Okay, so let me indulge you a little bit. There are a lot of people who are listening to our conversation and may not necessarily believe in our ideology that yes is a possibility in life, right? And they believe that sometimes it's better to not let their hopes get too high, right? And they say, I'm not going to think positively. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, at least I would not be disappointed. What do you say to somebody who is thinking that?
You can't change anybody's mind. So what I would say to them, every moment of life is a choice point moment. And the choice you make in this moment will determine the next step in your life. So that if you want to continue to live in a no when it's a yes universe, that's your choice. However, what I know and what I have found and what I believe to the core of my being is that this is a yes universe. Yes is your empowerment system. Yes is your energetic source. And those aren't just words. Those are actualities that as we believe in them, we can begin to shift the path of our life and what will show up on the path of our life. But it takes making the choice for movement and action.
In other words, one has to be self-aware, one has to be conscious, and one has to be willing to do the work, because there is work involved, right? Because most of us have been programmed to live in a world where we don't want to be too optimistic, or we don't have any, sensibility whatsoever. We just take things as they come. So it requires taking a shift from the way you think one way in terms of being indifferent about life to being open to this ideology of yes. Now, what does it take to get there?
Well, as I have seen now, and I've been on this path for 40 years, there's movements. We move along the path. We come into the path as, and I'm going to use this word and I don't quite mean it, we often move from victim consciousness, where we think the world is against us, where everything outside of us is responsible for everything that happens to us, to then we make a shift into victor consciousness. And victor means, oh, I do have power. There is a power within me that is greater than anything in the world. And regardless of what happens to me, as I am willing to see possibility, and as I said on Saturday, what lives in the middle of possibility is I, Possibility. I live in the middle of possibility. I create possibility by the thoughts that I hold in the directions I want to go. So then we move, even that, there's another movement after that. And from victor, we start to move to vessel, to where we say, wow, there truly is a greater power. And as the more I'm willing to surrender into this power, I become a vessel of the power.
Very interesting. Okay,
yes.
we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to be right back with more right here on Personalities and Profiles. Today, my guest is Toni Boehm. She's the author of the book, The Power of Yes. I'm Michael Robinson. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Microbin Radio, progressively elevating the conversation. Coming up next, personalities and profiles. Here's your host, Michael S. Robinson.
Hi there, welcome back. I'm Michael Robinson. Today we're talking to Toni Boehm. And Toni, you said something that was really interesting for me. You said, I am a midwife for the birthing of the soul's remembrance. It's a beautiful statement. What does it mean?
Well, it's my purpose statement of life. And everything I do, I weigh against that. Is what I'm doing going to be about birthing someone's soul's remembrance? And so the work that I do now, when I was a nurse, I worked in the physical. And now I'm working at the level of soul. And I actually have a new program called Soul Mastery. And it's a program that I'm taking around the United States and people are getting engaged in. And it's truly about that transformational process that occurs within us. Mm-hmm. So I am a midwife for the birthing of the soul's remembrance. It's meanings that I can't birth your baby, but I can certainly stand there in support of you as you birth your own.
So for those of us listening and want to have that experience, give us 3 tips on something we can do right now to begin the process. Breathe.
Yes. Breathe. The first is stop and breathe before you react. Stop and breathe before you react. 2 is realize every moment is a choice point moment. Mm-hmm. And in that, notice where it is you really want to go in life. Have you had enough of the same old, same old? If you keep asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Mm-hmm, then 3 is you must take a new action. If you continue with the same actions, you're always going to get what you've always got.
Right. Right. It's almost like a hamster on a wheel, spinning in the same direction, not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Right. So so for those of people who actually have not bought into this whole ideology of the power of yes, mind you, I believe it. I believe that yes equals, right, positive thinking. It equals this idea that we have the power to move our lives in any direction we so choose. That's what it means for me. And the show last Saturday was talking about this ideology of yes, not saying yes to everybody or everything that comes your way. Certainly we don't want to be doormats for the world, but at the same time, we want to be able to recognize the things that matters, right? The things that really speaks to our soul, our gut, right? So first of all, it's becoming self-aware. Most people operate unconsciously. We live our lives from day to day, not really paying attention to, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Our minds work almost like a computer, just calculating information over and over again without necessarily thinking or focusing on one thought or processing why we're thinking that. So the whole process begins with this whole idea of being self-aware. What can we do to begin the process of becoming more self-aware on a daily basis without having to go to meditation or yoga classes? What can someone do to become more self-aware?
You said without meditation. I do believe that meditation plays an important part, so I just want to add that. But one of the things is, and do not take lightly what I call the presence pause. Mm-hmm. That stopping and breathing and just giving yourself a moment to look at the choice.
That in of itself is a meditation, right? Because when you're breathing, you're literally bringing yourself into the present moment.
Yes, and remember, everything happens in the now.
Right.
When you're in the now, there is no past, there is no future. It's the perfection of the presence right here, right now. And so that's one of the things that people can do. The other one is, and it's so simple, as you know, that I am a life coach, and I like to call myself an accountability coach because, I don't play games. I don't play games. If you want to coach with me, it's because you want to move in a direction and you're ready to take that next step. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I say to the people I coach with is part of that stopping, taking that breath, that presence pause is then asking yourself, this is such a simple question. In fact, there's two of them I'm going to give the audience. One is, so what might be more interesting here? What might be more interesting here? It takes a lot of pressure off when you can really look at whatever's going on around you. What might be more interesting here? Salvation of a relationship, shifting the energy. What might be more interesting here? Mm-hmm. And the second question that's so simple is, what meaning am I giving this? What meaning? And when I can look and say, oh, you know what? I'm taking this personally. That's part of being self-aware, is just noticing when I'm taking things personally, when I'm not showing up. But I read an article many years ago, Michael, and I found it very interesting. It said that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is having the first level is having our physical needs, our security, that when we pop to that second level, it says the number one thing people want at that second level, when you're starting to be interested in being conscious, is they want to be seen as right. But being seen as right often just takes us down a rabbit hole.
It sounds quite familiar in our political season.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned something, the circle of transformation, which I think is a very interesting ideology. And this circle is this ability to move from one place to the next to the next. Tell us more about that.
Well, there are 5 places on this circle, what I call the circle of transformation. And remember, you're in the center of the circle. Now, you can be in the center of the circle and you can be unconscious, or you can be in the center of the circle and you can be conscious, tapping into that higher energy, that higher power, that source within you, whatever you want to call it. So I'm coming from this from the level of we're awake and observing. So the 5 pieces of the circle of transformation are intuit, inquire, imagine, innovate, and implement. So the first one is intuit. When you're conscious and you get an idea, you intuit an idea, that's really the universe giving you a yes, going, oh, here's a possibility. But you have to be awake enough, because normally the first thing people do is, oh, I could never do that. Oh, that's too big. I can't play. No. But when we can intuit and say, yes, it's a possibility, let me move forward, then we start asking questions. We inquire. Oh, so where might be the possibility of this? Who might I have to contact? What step do I need to take next? And then we can begin. If we can intuit and we can imagine, we can begin to inquire, then we can begin to imagine what the possibility might look like. Well, so what might it look like if I was really a graduate with a PhD? What might I be doing in the world? What if I was a graduate with a bachelor's degree? What if I was truly abundant, living an abundant life?
In other words, visualize it.
Yes, imagine is visualize. And once you can imagine and visualize, you can begin to innovate. And innovate is truly putting the possibilities into some type of form and structure. And then the last piece is implement, because nothing is nothing without action. Nothing is anything without action. And so that is the circle of transformation, that intuit, inquire, imagine, innovate, and implement.
Right. It's interesting. I started my business when I was 25 years old, and everything you mentioned was what were the protocols, right, for starting the business and making it into what it was, what it is today. So I totally understand that. But part of our culture, right, is that we don't really grow up with these ideas taught to us. They're certainly not taught in college. They're certainly not taught at church. You tend to go to church and you have the fear of God that's pounded into you at an early age. Although a lot of religious institutions are changing that ideology and becoming a little bit more open to the possibilities that, you should be positive and you should be open and everything is possible. But growing up a while back, the idea of positive thinking and the idea that you can really create a life for yourself because you have the power to do it, if you can visualize it, if you can intuit it, right? That was not part of our sensibility. So the whole journey began for me when I was in my early 20s and I began reading books like Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, and others, Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins, and they were really amazing thought leaders. And certainly your book is bringing a lot of the same narrative in a different light. How do we teach the younger generation this ideology? Because if it's not taught in school, if it's not taught at church, how do we get this message to them so they can realize the possibilities at age 7 or 8 or 9?
I do believe that there is a whole body of work and knowledge out there. There is Unity School for practical spirituality. There is Centers for Spiritual Living. And each one of those, especially I know for Unity, having been involved for so many years, they have curriculum for youth. They have curriculum for youth that can be adapted for home study. They have curriculum that can be adapted for any type of ministry that you have, because if we change the world one thought at a time. And imagine if we started with our children. And Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, said, who will take care of the children? And that was her charge. And she started a school that many people might remember called We Wisdom. Mm-hmm. And out of We Wisdom came the Word for the Day that was on TV. And during my time, when I was growing up, it came on between Howdy Doody, right after Howdy Doody in the next show. And it was the Word for the Day, and it was a positive thought. I was one of those children ingrained with that, never having ever heard of Unity until I found it. Sure. when I moved to Kansas City. And now we have well over 600 centers across the United States, and on the internet. It's so I believe there is a curriculum out there. I believe there are people who are working to start. And positive thinking is not dangerous. It's actually an opportunity to begin to look at life differently. Mm-hmm. We have been so ingrained truly with negativity that, and I just want to go back to the Hebrew Testament that says, do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but, eat of the tree of wisdom. And that wisdom lives within you. That wisdom is the power of spirit. Charles Fillmore always said that Unity was first century, and I'm going to use this word, Christianity, not Christianity, Christianity, meaning that there's a power within us. He knew there was an innate wisdom within us, that if we begin to tap that wisdom, and of course with Unity, based upon the teachings of what Mr. Fillmore considered the master teacher, Jesus, and he called Jesus one of the master teachers. And so it is that when you really do start to awaken, and you can see the Bible and the New Christian Testament with new eyes, you see that the master teacher Jesus left us a blueprint of the soul's evolution. And literally everything that's going to happen in our lives, you can see it out pictured when you have eyes to see in those Gospels. Wow,
quite powerful. Toni Boehm, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you. We've come to the end of another Personalities and Profiles here on Microbin Radio. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope you got a lot of information. I hope you were inspired by Toni's words. I certainly was. Please follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I'm going to be live on AM 970 The Answer this Saturday at 2 p.m. for the Michael S. Robinson Show. So tune in then. Thank you all very much. Remember, this is your time. Use it wisely. I'm Michael Robinson.
This program is sponsored by Microbin Incorporated.